We're good to go, Greg.
Great.
Hi, this is Tom Vander Ark with Getting Smart. This is another Smart Cities interview. Today, I'm talking with my friend Greg Butler. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm terrific. You're a internationally known expert on partnerships, and some people may not connect innovation and partnerships. They may think of innovation as, you know, the entrepreneur that dreams up a new widget, but how do you see partnerships, being critical to innovation?
Well, I think if we really look at innovation, it really doesn't happen with one person working in isolation. And the reason it doesn't happen with one person working in isolation is because all of us need to step out of our comfort zone or out of our normal zone to innovate, to do something new. And that requires typically someone helping us do that. And so the way that I like to think of it is that true innovation happens at points of diversity meeting each other. That's when we get the need for innovation, and that's when we get innovative process to be able to work effectively. And so if you look at an organisation, it's very hard to innovate within the organisation because all the norms are supporting traditional behaviours, and you can scale that up across a city or whatever. Where you start to see innovation happening is where you get two diverse or three or four or five diverse organisations or individuals coming together and can look at the problem or the challenge differently, because you've got multiple viewpoints to look at the problem, multiple ways to think about it, and then that support for creating a new view is a critical part of the partnership element. So I honestly believe that if we think about innovation as being locking smart people away and coming up with really bright ideas,
right,
things are very rare and they usually don't land, because the way you should think about measuring innovation is when it's landed and it's creating new value for people. So a good idea is not a good idea unless it's implemented, and when it's implemented is when we can see the real impact or the value of innovation, and that typically requires a partnership to make it happen.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Partnerships can be part of the innovation. As you indicated, they're almost always part of taking an innovation to scale, right?
Yeah. Someone told me, I think this is true, but if you look at, say, patents as an example of innovation in the business sector, high-tech companies, etc.
Right.
They generate a lot of patents. Most of them are fine-tuned. The true breakthrough innovation patents very rarely happen within that industry. They come from the outside of that industry,
right,
and we call that disruptive innovation. And the reason it's disruptive is because the idea has come outside of the industry or the area. And typically that only happens when you start to get groups working together or people working together in partnership. It doesn't happen when you just get one person scratching out on a bit of paper or having a bright idea.
So Greg, you talk a lot about sort of higher level, higher order partnerships, moving from transactional to transformational. What are some of the keys of moving up that ladder?
Well, I think if we think about it, and just to clarify your point, we use partnership almost as a blanket word for anything that ranges from casual collaboration through to deep innovation partnerships that are changing things like the environment or education.
Right.
The way that we like to think about it is you can think of partnerships as being transactional, which is typically contract driven. In other words, it's me saying, I want to partner with you, but I'm going to tell you what to do. Here's the contract. I'm going to give you money to do it. You go and do it. We don't really see that's a place for innovation because the contract and the process locks out innovation. It's getting work done with a transfer of resources. On the other end of the spectrum, you can think about innovation as being truly collaborative and innovative. And by that, what we mean is you come to a challenge where you don't know the solution up front, and you work with the partners to be able to generate new ideas and new solutions. And we think these are the really important partnerships, partnerships for innovation. And to do that, what you need to do is you need to harness the creative power and the creative ideas of people and get across the fact that everyone will have different agendas or different drivers. And so what we've found is to be successful, you need someone to broker that, or to someone who can help manage that process of bringing people together, challenging their current orthodoxies and assumptions, and building a conducive agenda through things like interest-based negotiation, where we start to say, let's think beyond your first position to what's the realistic position that may yield that new value, that innovative value. And so the critical role of people being able to massage the different actors in a partnership is really critical. In other words, I'm sure you've experienced, as all your listeners have experienced, if you just put 5 people in a room and say work together collaboratively and effectively, you're going to have a rare chance that it'll happen. You might get them working together, but they won't let go of their original position, their organisational position or their personal thinking. And so if we really want to see change in areas like education, what we've got to do is bring together diverse people, not look for people with the same views, bring together very diverse people, but have in that someone who can help manage that process, so we actually do get people to drop their first agenda or their first position and see the bigger goal here and how we can innovate against that bigger goal. So that's what we call partnership brokering skills.
Tell us a little bit about partnership goals. Should they be broad or narrow? How would you advise people to describe partnership goals?
Well, I think the first thing in any partnership, there's sort of 2 key sets of goals, we'd say. One is that there needs to be a set of shared goals. What do we all ascribe to? What do we want to do together? And then again, that's a process we go through to agree on what those goals are. There's also the individual goals. In other words, partnerships only work where there's mutual benefit, meaning that not only does the partnership do well, but I have to do well. Partnerships fail very quickly if we all sign up to this big goal or big set of goals, but it's not meeting my individual goals or my organisational goals. So there's 2 sets of goals. I would say it's really critical that we get crisp and focused and have ways of measuring our success around both those goal sets. So in a set of partnership goals, it's really important to get crisp. If you're waffly or fluffy or whatever, it's unlikely you'll make significant progress. And so this process of getting clear, and not just leaving it at goals, but how do we measure that goal, measure those goals? Not only, and this is important, Tom, I think, for the people, it's not only measuring the goals in the outputs of the partnership, in other words, that we might have trained 50,000 teachers, but it's also measuring the goals in how the partnership has worked together to achieve that. Because if you think about people bringing together ideas, resources, experience, the key question is, did that add value? Because if you could have trained 50,000 teachers at a lower cost with one organisation doing it, then do it that way. That's the best way to do it. So we've got to say, not only measuring the outputs, but measuring, did the partnership itself do that more effectively, efficiently? Did it deliver better results, more innovative results?
Is it better if partnerships focus on a narrow set of objectives like teacher capacity or a broader set of objectives like improving K-12 education?
I personally think it's better to think holistically. So, for example, I'm working in a partnership now, New Pedagogies for Deep Learning. We're focusing on transformation of learning in 1,000 schools in 10 countries. That's a big, audacious, hairy partnership. And it has set goals. We do want to change the learning. We do want to make sure that we're doing that across all of these schools. So it is big. I think if you're going to get into partnership, it's better to think big than small, because there's an overhead of working in a partnership. So think of big innovation, big challenges, and then go for it.
So, but that, I guess this is the problem that I have with the collective impact stuff, that when it's really big, it gets really squishy. You get so many partners against such a broad agenda that it becomes really difficult to evaluate effectiveness and to measure outcomes. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is collective impact is a great map of how you can design partnerships. The critical piece in a collective impact or any other partnership is how well that process has been brokered. And so you get clarity through having people who can help people get past their agendas. What you just described to me is a partnership where we haven't gone through the processes of being really crisp and clear on what we want to do together and what we want to do individually. And what happens if you don't go through that process is you end up everyone in the partnership wanting to achieve their own goals with no clarity around what the joint effort is or what the joint goals are. So the brokering process is critical in that. And whether it's collective impact, whether it's whatever model of partnership you want, the key bit is you've got someone who has the skills to be able to bring together the actors to work in a conducive way to achieve those crisp, clear, big goals.
That's really helpful. I hadn't thought about the goal clarity both for the individual partner and then for the partnership. Smart Cities is really a look at cities and how they can dramatically improve the learning outcomes. As you think about a city, it sounds like cities could use a partnership brokering capacity because there is, you described as a specific set of skills. Does every city need that sort of a capacity?
I believe they do, and I believe they do because I'm part of a professional association, a group of people around the world who are focusing on this profession. And one of our key skills that we try and focus on is how we can skill people to push groups, push collaboratives, push partnerships to move beyond the status quo, to move beyond business as usual. Because if you bring together people and the net result is it's business as usual, you really haven't achieved any gain. It might be a nice social meeting, you might have addressed some relational barriers, but you really haven't moved the agenda. So you need someone in there who's fairly tough but gentle. You know, they've got the skills to be able to help people reflect and progress, I would say. Reflect on what is it that's really important for us. How can I get this alignment with the other people so that we can take the bigger goal, the moral imperative I think people like Michael Fullan talk about.
Right.
We go to that level, and then how can we all work together on that, realizing that we do need to achieve our own objectives in that process. That's a skill set. It's a critical skill set. For cities, if they don't have that, then I would suggest they start thinking about how they develop it, because it translates collaborative effort into innovative, increased value. What people are talking about is shared value now. How do we build this notion of increased value that's also shared value? And so it's a skill set. It's definitely not something or other you can just take anyone and say, you know, you go and broker this partnership now and it'll be successful. And it's an important skill set.
Where's the most common problem? Is it in the construction of the partnership or the facilitation of the partnership? Where do these things go off the rails?
I think there's many places a partnership can go off the rails, but I think that we say any partnership goes through 4 phases. The first phase is scoping and building, and that's where you identify what the challenge is, you agree on the shared goals, you make it explicit what individual goals are, everyone's aware of it, people agree to get behind this effort. This is where we start to work towards signing an agreement that we're going to work together, or at least having an agreement. Right. And identifying where we have gaps in who we might need. So if we want to change, curriculum as being a partnership effort, do we have the right expertise and resources behind us to do that? So we might have goodwill, but if we don't have the expertise, we might be hampered. So scoping and building, it can fall off the rails if you don't do a good job of getting below the surface. Partnerships that are built on just this, our first agendas generally are status quo, business as usual, and they won't last because people haven't got to this level of mutual benefit, mutual accountability. That's really important. In the second phase, which we call managing and mobilizing, this is where we build governance, we build working relationships, we build decision-making processes, how we get resources, etc. That can work as long as everyone understands clearly what their roles and responsibilities are. What's my role as a partner to move this partnership ahead? In the third phase, we say that's reviewing and revising, which is where you start to innovate on the partnership itself. We want you to improve. And that can fall apart if people aren't really clear on how we do this reviewing and revising process, where we're both analytical and understanding of change. And the last one, which we call moving on and scaling up, fails because many reasons, but particularly when people fall in love with the partnership. They think the relationship is more important than the results. So quite often you'll see partnerships that were designed to run for 2 years, suddenly people want to run them for 3 and 4 years because they've fallen in love with the process of the partnership. So having a broker there means that at all those phases you can have someone who can do the diagnosis and help people move on and build the brokering capacity in all the partners. So it's not you absolutely need one individual, but having everyone start to get smarter, more capacity around how I become a better partner and how I can help move the agenda ahead is a critical part of it.
That's a super useful way to frame the phrases of a partnership, and I had just thought about them in the sort of construction and facilitation, but that's really nicely laid out. It seems clear, Greg, that cities would benefit from having a partnership broker like you to build smart partnerships. We really appreciate your contributions to the Smart Cities project and appreciate your work. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Tom.